No, right.
That way.
That's the left way, because the other way aggravates them.
That's what I thought. Okay.
Do you need her to take a level?
No.
You're okay.
There's actually just one piece of hair sticking out there. Sorry, if you don't mind me.
Once upon a time, there were 3 bears. And, okay, John?
Something?
No.
Okay, are you...
Sound of music.
Sound of Music for the umpteenth time.
You rolling?
Yep.
Okay. If you could reach back to you're on Broadway, 3 successes in a row, and this new Rodgers and Hammerstein musical opens. I'm curious if you saw it then.
Yes, I did. I think I must have seen it at a special actors benefit because I think I was probably working also on Broadway. And I went to see Mary Martin in The Sound of Music, and I never dreamed that I would be asked, to play the film, which was a great thrill.
Reaction to the show?
I liked it very much. I think when it came time to do the film, one of the sort of primary concerns of all of us was, oh gosh, if we're not careful, adding the beautiful scenery of Austria and things like that, it could become unbelievably saccharine. So we did our best to kind of take some of the sugar out of it and make it just a little bit more astringent. And I think you have to thank Chris Plummer for that too. He really made an enormous contribution in sort of being the marvelous sort of strong person that held us all together.
Oh, yeah. Oh, didn't we?
Oh, that's right. We were going to do that.
So I'm not seeing her.
All right, well, I'll start again because I have another thing to say about that, actually.
Well, I just came back from New York doing Chris, and he was very funny about talking that.
Oh, was he?
Talking about that. He said, it could have been unbearable.
Yeah, isn't that funny? Okay. So the question was, and I'll repeat it.
You want to start over?
Yeah, I might as well, and I'll try and put it...
We'll talk about you're on Broadway and the show opens.
Yeah. I think I was performing on Broadway in My Fair Lady when The Sound of Music opened. It may have been Camelot, but I think it was Fair Lady. And I went to see the actors' benefit performance of Sound of Music, and I liked it a lot. I obviously never dreamed that I would be asked to play the role of Maria. I think I really thought that probably Mary would do it when the time came for the film. And also, shortly thereafter, Carol Burnett and I did a performance at Carnegie Hall where we did an absolutely outrageous spoof on The Sound of Music and the Pratt family singers, as we called ourselves, and little knowing that I would actually be doing the film later.
For the benefit of hearing it directly from you, could you just go over the beginnings of your film career and that you did back-to-back projects and lead it up to your first meeting with Bob Wise and hearing about the desire to have you play Maria?
First meeting with Bob. Can you remember that, Mike?
He came over, he brought you over to the studio and you went and you asked him, how are we going to get the schmaltz out of this piece?
Did I?
Yeah.
Well, that's a good time to mention that then. Okay.
And
Do
he
you
said, oh, we're going to get along. It's fine.
I guess Sound of Music was only the 3rd film that I had ever made, and up to that point I was obviously only really known for the things that I'd done on Broadway, and that's actually wondrous for me, but I don't guess the rest of America really knew who Julie Andrews was at that time. So I had done early years in vaudeville in England, had the good fortune to come to Broadway to do The Boyfriend and My Fair Lady and Camelot, and then Walt Disney asked me if I would do Mary Poppins, and right after that I did the Americanization of Emily, and then came the offer to do The Sound of Music. The interesting thing is that I had made all 3 films and not one of them had been released, and so I had the great delight of just feeling like I was just playing at making movies, and I had none of the responsibility. I didn't really know what people were going to say or if they were going to be a success. I just had a lovely time making 3 films. But it was strange that all 3 were in the can and they hadn't been released. And I think it came out that it was Poppins, and then I guess in that order, Poppins and Emily, and then The Sound of Music. gosh, it's such a long time ago to remember when I first met Bob, but I think he asked me over to the studio to 20th Century Fox to have a meeting. And he spoke about The Sound of Music. Obviously, I was absolutely thrilled. And my only concern was whether it would be very saccharine, because when you add the beautiful scenery of Austria and you've got 7 children and everything else that's kind of gooey and icky and nuns as well, it could get very saccharine. So my one worry was that my one hope was that we would get to take some of the sugar out of it and make it just a bit more astringent. And happily, Bob had exactly the same feelings I did, so it was marvelous.
I guess there could be a possibility to boil this down and to look at it as, oh, it's the same nanny again. Did that cross your mind?
I think the fact that I had done a nanny role as Mary Poppins crossed my mind, and I'm very glad that I had done the Americanization of Emily sort of in between the 2 films, because I hoped it would show that I didn't always just play sort of nanny roles. And as it was a hard image to get away from, because Sound of Music was so successful, and Poppins too, I guess. But I'm glad I had Emily in there. But listen, I wouldn't have turned down the role for anything, so I was going to do it come what may if they asked me.
Now, at some point, hopefully to your delight, a script for the movie came your way, written by Ernie Lehman, but you made a lot of changes from the play.
Right. I only know that certain songs had been added and a couple of songs had been deleted from the play, but I don't remember too many actual scenes that were different. I mean, obviously for a film it's fleshed out, but to my feeling it stayed pretty much the same as the play, basically. The story was basically the same. And I loved the screenplay. I thought it was fine.
Now, although they started the filming in Hollywood, of course the bulk of it was in Salzburg. Could you give me your impression of the city before we talk about the production?
Right. Don't stop rolling camera. Mike, the very first stuff we shot was in the courtyard of the nunnery convent, wasn't it? On stage.
The very first thing was my favorite things.
Yeah.
Oh, that's right.
And
Okay.
the graveyard at the
And
end.
then the graveyard, and then we didn't do then what?
Maria and all the nuns singing.
Right, and all of that, and then we pretty quickly went to Austria, and then has that all been talked about? I'm sure it has.
Not really, not in that kind of...
Okay, and
Well, I'd like to-
and then we came back and did the rest of the musical numbers. That's the way it went. Right. Okay.
Excuse me, your hand's sort of wiggling around just in the corner of the screen.
Okay, I'll keep it out of the way. So how do I get into this? We began shooting.
Well, just tell me, start with Salzburg and tell me what you think of it.
Okay.
I'd like to get some feeling with the city.
Yes. The thrill of seeing Salzburg in the spring is extraordinary. If anyone hasn't seen it, I highly recommend that they do, because it was so beautiful. There were tulips everywhere and daffodils everywhere, and every kind of blossom was out, and the city just sat there and was. I'd never been to Salzburg before in my life. Everybody else managed to get to do a lot of sightseeing, but I was so busy and I was in so much of the film that there wasn't that much time for me. And if there was time, I had my very tiny little daughter with me, and I was sort of either home being a real nanny or just being so weary that I decided I'd rest. But I saw as much as I could, and of course filming on location as we did all around Salzburg and into Bavaria, I had some marvelous opportunities to see the mountains and the scenery and beautiful lakes, and it was a very happy time.
Can you mention the rain problems?
Yeah, I will. It was a very happy time. The only thing was that somebody somewhere forgot to mention that Salzburg has the world's, I think, 7th highest annual rainfall. And so, of course, along with all this gorgeous. We were very lucky. We got a lot of sunshine to start with, but towards the end